Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's debate. My name is Lily Maud and I am the chairman, and Kira Zhang is the timekeeper. The debate will be judged by a panel of 3 adjudicators who are Mr. Vassar, Mr. Ivanov and Mr. Putland. The topic of tonight's debate is that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. The affirmative team seated to my right is from Glenunga International High School, and the negative team seated to my left is from St. Aloysius College. The speaking time for this debate is 5 minutes with a double bell at the end of your speaking time. A warning bell will ring once at 4 minutes. A continuous bell will ring 30 seconds after the final bell. I declare this debate open. I call upon the first affirmative speaker, Zazie Newell.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Timekeeper, fellow debaters, and of course, our fabulous audience. The topic of tonight's debate is that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. We define the topic as national, meaning the country of Australia, age of criminal responsibility to mean the age that signifies when someone can be formally charged or held responsible in the juvenile justice system, and raised to 14 years to mean increasing the minimum age of national criminal responsibility from 10 years to 14 years. Overall, we define the topic as children under the age of 14 in Australia should not be capable of being formally charged, and we, the affirmative team, full-heartedly agree with this statement. Tonight, I will discuss 2 points. My first point follows how keeping children as young as 10 in the juvenile justice system is detrimental to them, and my second point circles around how there are many trustworthy groups who agree that the age should be raised. Our second speaker, Mia, will also discuss 2 points. Her first point centralises around how there are better alternatives to throwing children in the juvenile justice system, and that there's a heightened likelihood of reoffending. Her second point talks about how much money is wasted on it. Our third speaker, Nina, will rebut and sum up our team's case. Now moving on to my first point for this evening, that holding young children criminally responsible is detrimental to their mental health, key developmental years, and overall life, considering how they shouldn't be going through the juvenile justice system so young. The University of New South Wales states that locking children up during these crucial years affects their development. Among other things, it increases children's risk of depression, suicide, self-harm, and leads to poor emotional development. Clearly, criminal responsibility would stunt a child's growth as an average person in society. Along with this, it is absurd to believe that they can have the same comprehension levels as an adult in situations where criminal responsibility is in play, considering most 10-year-olds wouldn't even know what criminal responsibility means. To discuss this further, multiple medical and psychiatric bodies, including the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists, support raising the age, stating that contemporary research shows how children's brains are still developing and how they do not fully understand the consequences and severity of their actions. Their president also states that over 75% of young persons in detention have one or more psychiatric disorders that need treatment. Adding on to this, Amnesty International states that many of these children are suffering from a lack of recognition of their disabilities, lack of school and community support, and a total lack of appropriate supervision. So, essentially, these children are getting thrown into the justice system at an impressionable age, most likely with a disability or disorder, and not getting appropriate support, and we expect them to thrive, learn, and rehabilitate in such conditions? Think about how these already disadvantaged children are affected by carrying a criminal record. It's a negative credential that is ultimately harmful and damaging to their lives. It's absurd to believe that a child can change the course of their entire life at 10. Having criminal charges doesn't teach them to grow and change as a person. It teaches them that they're only as good as their worst mistake, and that is ultimately destructive to the course of their life. Do we really believe that giving a child criminal responsibility is worth causing these detriments to their lives? Now moving swiftly along to my second point for tonight's debate, that there's an agreement against the majority of professional, medical, legal, human rights boards and governments that the minimum age of criminal responsibility should be 14. The Royal Australian College of General Practitioners states that over 120 medical, legal and social service organisations have written to the Attorneys General about raising the age of criminal responsibility up to 14. The general consensus between these professionals was that locking children up or even having them in the system as young as 10 achieves nothing and causes harm. The Children's Commissioner for the Australian Medical Association and the Law Council of Australia also demanded that the national tragedy of jailing children as young as 10. Adding on to this, they said that prison should not be a rite of passage for any child, and the medical evidence is clear. These children often experience violence, abuse, disability, homelessness, and drug or alcohol misuse. Criminalising this behaviour of a young and vulnerable children creates a vicious cycle of disadvantage and increases the likelihood of ongoing experiences with the legal system. The United Nations Children's Fund also feels strongly about changing the age, stating that they believe all countries' minimum should be at least 14, if not higher. And in 2019, the Committee on the Rights of the Child said the same thing. These reliable and trustworthy groups and individuals in their field believe that raising the age is not only a good idea, but an idea that is done for the success of a safe juvenile justice system. So, in conclusion, we, as the affirmative team, fully believe that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. Thank you.
I call upon the first negative speaker, Leila Morales. Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. We agree with the definition given by the affirmative team. However, we, the negative team, believe that this statement is undoubtedly false. Today, as first speaker, I will talk about how raising the criminal age will weaken the justice system, creating a generation without accountability and responsibility for their actions. I will also discuss the rise of youth crime, giving evidence of recent cases. Our second speaker, Sachi, will then discuss how the current juvenile justice system is effective as it is designed to help children in the best and safest way possible. She will then highlight how the consequences help with early intervention and rehabilitation. Our third speaker, Gianna, will rebut and sum up our team's case. The first affirmative speaker has suggested that juvenile detention has a negative psychological effect on the children. This claim is incorrect as it overlooks many aspects of juvie. According to the Queensland Government, youth detention centres still allow the children to learn at school and rehabilitate. Furthermore, each individual has tailored programs to help them have the best opportunities once they have finished serving time, as well as trauma programs which help address the underlying issues and enhance mental health. Now I will elaborate on my two compelling arguments. Firstly, by lifting the age of criminal responsibility, we would be weakening the justice system, causing individuals to have no sense of conduct and accountability. Accountability is a fundamental principle in the justice system, highlighting that every individual, regardless of age, must be held liable to their actions. This reinforces the concept in which all actions have consequences, supporting a sense of responsibility in our community, therefore ensuring that offenders understand the impact they have had on others. According to Dr. Melanie Killen, a psychologist from the University of California, morals are formed throughout the first 4 years of a child's life. In her article published in the Library of Medicine, she states that morals are influenced by social factors like parents and peers. By 10 years, children have a concrete base of values and a developing moral compass, which separates right from wrong. By having legal consequences from the age of 10, it is a powerful deterrent which emphasises the importance of making responsible choices. By holding younger individuals accountable, they understand the severity of their actions, reducing risk of repeated offences. Furthermore, if we continue to erode accountability, it will impact behaviour development. Adolescents are in a critical stage of their emerging understanding of right and wrong. Consequences for criminal behaviour will play a significant role in self-improvement. If children were not held accountable, this will result in them believing their actions are acceptable. This will cause long-term problems including criminal behaviour in adulthood and social issues. According to the Raising Children Net, the Australian Government website on parenting, instilling consequences are vital to influence how your child will behave. No matter what age, it is vital for criminal activity to be addressed so that our young children can grow up with accountability and understand social norms. Now on to my second point. If the criminal responsibility was raised, what consequences will be placed for children aged 10 to 13?
Recently, there has been a devastating rise of crimes committed by children. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, youth crime in Australia has rose by 6% since June 2023, with 44% of these offenders between the ages of 10 and 14. If we raise the criminal responsibility, children aged 10 to 13 will know they will not face severe repercussions for their actions, leading to a greater increase in criminal activity. Following on, ABC's News reported that in August of 2021 in Sydney, 6 teenagers were charged with the murder of a 16-year-old boy. This boy was allegedly bashed by the group after they forced entry into his house. 2 of the offenders were aged 13 years old. Another devastating case, according to 7 News, was the torture of Kira Ha in Sunshine Coast, who was lured into the sleepover on the 11th of March 2023, where she was assaulted, taunted, and cut with knives for 5 hours straight. The 3 girls were aged 12, 13, and 14. Furthermore, 1 in 4 offences by young people are intended to cause injury. Fortunately, the current criminal responsibility age is 10 years old, meaning all these individuals were charged with the consequences for their behaviour. By keeping the criminal age, the children will be punished accordingly and will bring closure to the affected communities. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, raising the age of criminal responsibility to 14 risks undermining the very principles that uphold justice, which would fail our generation, leaving them without a crucial understanding of the consequences for their actions. How can we justify raising the age of criminal responsibility when our future relies on a society which is built on conduct and accountability? Thank you.
I call upon the second affirmative speaker, Ms. Madam.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that the national age for criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. We, the affirmative team, wholeheartedly agree with this statement. And before I state my argument, I would like to point out some of the flaws in the negative team's case. The first negative speaker has tried to tell you that raising the age for criminal responsibility will create a justice system without accountability. This is completely false, as there are countless better alternatives to our current detention system. One of these is restorative justice conferencing, where offenders meet victims face to face and discuss their offence, as well as a way to repair the harm. This is an excellent example of how we can hold children accountable without the trauma of imprisoning them, as our first speaker has outlined. Now to my first point for this evening, that there are countless other more effective options for reforming youth than imprisoning them. The Australian Institute for Health and Welfare states that more than 85% of youth released from juvenile detention received another sentence within 12 months. This highlights how a punitive approach to rehabilitating young offenders is completely ineffective and actually leads to re-offences. This shouldn't be happening, especially when there are countless other, more effective alternatives to incarcerating and punishing youth that have proven results. One of these alternatives is a restorative justice conferencing program. Restorative justice is defined as a process whereby parties with a stake in a specific offence collectively resolve how to deal with the aftermath of the offence and its implications for the future. And these conferences involve a safe environment where the two parties discuss the offence and reach an agreement on how the harm can be repaired by the offender. A restorative justice program run by the Queensland Government in 2018 to 2019 found that in total 82% of conferences resulted in a verbal or written response, something that simply doesn't happen when offenders are either locked up or punished. Furthermore, 77% of the 1,667 young people who participated in the program either did not reoffend or showed a significant decrease in the magnitude of their reoffence. This is only one of the countless other alternatives, more of which I will touch on in my second point. By raising the age of criminal responsibility, we can allow children who have been unnecessarily criminalised to get the help that they need through programs that will prevent them from going down a path of crime, rather than encouraging it. And we should be able to introduce these remedies and lower the age of criminal responsibility, even if it requires some changes to the system, as the benefits are clearly. Now to my second point for this evening, that putting children in detention-based supervision is a complete waste of money. The National Indigenous Times states that it costs a whopping $1.03 million per year to hold one child in detention. That's over $2,800 per day per incarcerated child for the taxpayer. And all for something that, as I've outlined in my previous point, has no effect whatsoever. If we raise the national age for criminal responsibility to 14, we can repurpose the millions upon millions of dollars being wasted on our current futile system and put the money towards other programs, a concept called justice reinvestment. The Australian Justice Reform Initiative organisation discusses many alternative programs that are successful, such as early intervention and prevention programs that reduce crime at a population level by between 5 and 31% and reduce offending among at-risk populations by 50%, but they especially underscore the importance of First Nations place-based approaches which have seen significant benefits. The fact is that Indigenous children are completely disproportionately overrepresented in the youth justice system when compared to their non-Indigenous counterparts, with 63% of those aged 10 to 17 in detention being First Nations Australians, and with First Nations youth being incarcerated at 28 times the rate of non-Indigenous youth, as per the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare in 2023. One of the place-based programs that helps combat this is the Marangooka Reinvestment Program happening in Bourke, New South Wales. This project focuses on early intervention through youth mentoring, skills training and cultural education, as well as community empowerment through working closely with local non-for-profit organisations to combat the root causes of juvenile crime in Indigenous societies. This kind of project is what the millions of dollars being wasted could be diverted to, and through raising the age of criminal responsibility to 14, we would be able to do this, therefore creating a better outcome from the public and most importantly the youth trapped in a reoffending cycle. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that the national age for criminal responsibility most certainly should be raised to 14, as to not do so would be to sideline the mountains of evidence supporting this motion. Thank you.
I call upon the second negative speaker, Sachi Suraj.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. We, the negative team, believe that this statement is indisputably false. The second affirmative speaker has suggested that we are wasting money. This point completely overlooks the successfulness of the current justice system. According to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, Australia's approach is actually seen as the best practice model. Furthermore, there are many successful programs proving that money is being used wisely. An example is the Backtrack program in New South Wales, which has a 95% success rate. This clearly shows that we are spending the money on a system that is successful and effective. She's also said that there are better options. However, I would like to question why we need better options when the current justice system works effectively. According to the Australian Institute of Criminology, the current system is tailored to suit children, showing that they have created a system with much research to back it up. Our first speaker has already talked about how the current national age allows children to be aware of accountability and teach them to take responsibility for their actions. She has also questioned what consequences will be implemented for 10 to 14-year-olds who commit crimes. Tonight, I will discuss two evidentially supported points. Now to my first point. Raising the minimum age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 14 is unnecessary, as the current system is effective and designed to help the child in the best and safest possible way. The proven and reliable principle of Dolly-Inga packs for children aged 10 to 14 in Australia strikes a crucial balance between liability and developmental understanding. This principle enforces the need for prosecution to present evidence showing that the child understood what they were doing and recognised that it was wrong. This nuanced approach is complemented by specialised police training, psychological evaluation, and youth courts prioritising welfare and privacy of the child. This process is designed to minimise trauma and promote positive outcomes. A 2023 research by the Australian Institute of Criminology shows that children dealt with under the current system have lower reoffending rates compared to those in adult courts, proving that the current system is effective. Moreover, the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child has acknowledged Australia's approach as the best practice model. This process ensures that the justice system balances criminal responsibility with the child's developmental needs, providing appropriate support and minimising potential harm. Therefore, we should question, why change an internationally recognised best practice model to a model which hasn't yet been tested or proven? Now to my second point. The current age of criminal responsibility at 10 years allows for early intervention and rehabilitation, which prevents further criminal behaviour. Identifying young offenders earlier allows for targeted support to address underlying issues such as family problems, mental health concerns, or substance abuse. For instance, the New South Wales Government Youth on Track program supports young people aged 10 to 14 at risk or within the juvenile justice system. The program offers mentoring, counselling, education and family support, as well as extracurricular activities to facilitate reintegration to the community. This initiative has achieved a notable 90% reduction in reoffending rates, clearly demonstrating the positive effects on children aged 10 to 14. This approach not only fosters individual growth, but also paves the way for a brighter future by offering children greater opportunities for success and personal fulfilment. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, our justice system's emphasis on Dolly-Inga packs and its commitment to targeted rehabilitation programs are crucial in meeting the needs of young offenders while fostering their positive development. As Maya Angelou wisely noted, I have learnt that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. By focusing on early intervention and comprehensive support, our system not only prevents reoffending, but also instills hope and confidence in the future of young people. By continuing to uphold and enhance these practices, we are investing a brighter future in every child, enabling them to realise their full potential and lead a successful, fulfilling life. Thank you.
I call upon the third affirmative speaker, Nina Dry.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for tonight's debate is that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. We, the affirmative team, firmly uphold this notion. Before I recap my team's points, I would like to point out the flaws in the negative team's arguments. The first negative speaker has said that raising the age will weaken the justice system and means that children aren't held accountable. Raising the age does not mean that children who commit serious offences will not be held accountable in some form. The Australian Institute of Criminology had an investigation about restorative justice approaches where they state that welfare-based interventions such as community service, education and rehabilitation programs can still require offenders to address the harm they caused without the negative long-term effects of criminalisation. The first negative speaker has also brought up the Kira Hart case and several other cases involving children. We don't deny that children are capable of doing heinous things. However, we believe that our legal system should be consistent for all. For someone to be found guilty for a serious crime, it is essential to prove that the individual had a guilty mindset, also known as mens rea. Peak medical bodies believe that the brain is not developed enough until at least 14 to make proper judgments over the consequences of one's actions. Then young people should not be held criminally responsible for crimes which they aren't even capable of understanding. Would the opposing team say that a 9-year-old should be held criminally responsible, or a 5-year-old? The only reason to argue for the current age of 10 is because that is where the current legal limit is set, which is the direct opposition to the views of medical, legal, and human rights experts. The first offender speaker has also said that juvie can still be a good place with several different rehabilitation and counselling programs. As our first speaker has already said, children in the justice system have an increased risk to suicide, depression, and self-harm, and leads to poor social development. Yes, juvie may have positive programs, but this statistic shows that they really are not working, on top of the reoffending stats that our second speaker has brought up. The first negative speaker has also said that children should know the difference between wrong and right by the age of 10. Children may understand basic moral concepts. This does not mean they are capable of fully understanding the long-term consequences of their actions. The Royal Australian College of Physicians says that the capacity for high-order reasoning, impulse control, and risk assessment continues to develop well into adolescence, meaning that children under 14 lack the mental maturity to be held accountable in the same way as adults, and therefore the criminal responsibility age should be raised. The second negative speaker has said that our current system is already good, why should we change it? What about both of our previous speakers' points? Our current system is a traumatic pipeline for children, increasing their risk of suicide, self-harm, and depression, on top of ruining all their future lives ahead of them, by forcing them into a hard-to-escape cycle of reoffending. Do we really believe that this is a good cycle? To restate what our second speaker has already said, the current system that we have has a recidivism of 85%, which clearly shows how ineffective our current cycle is. Our first speaker has already spoken to you about the horrifying detrimental effects that our current system has on children, many of whom already come from traumatized backgrounds. She spoke about the terrible mental health impacts incarceration has on children's developmental years. Her second point covered the general consensus throughout medical bodies, government, and human rights organisations for our side, and spoke about their ideas when it comes to raising the age. Our second speaker has spoken to you about the countless more effective options to reforming our youth, rather than imprisoning them in a cycle that has been proven not to work, bringing up reoffending rates. She also discussed that from an economic standpoint, our current responsibility age is costing us a huge amount of money, a whopping $1.3 million for just one child per year. So in conclusion, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we, the affirmative team, strongly believe that the national criminal responsibility age needs to be raised to 14. Thank you.
I call upon the third negative speaker, Gianna Diaz.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that the national age of criminal responsibility should be raised to 14 years. We, the negative team, firmly believe this statement is unquestionably false. To begin, the first affirmative speaker claims that raising the age of criminal responsibility will prevent disruptions to social development. However, this overlooks the fact that young offenders are not merely punished, they are provided with opportunities for rehabilitation, education, and new extracurricular activities. Research from the Australian Institute of Criminology shows that a higher age threshold often result in ineffective rehabilitation and increased reoffending. In contrast, the Australian Law Reform Commission finds that young offenders respond better to earlier, targeted interventions that support their development and reduce recidivism. Thus, increasing the age limit alone may not address the important issues effectively. The first affirmative speaker also believes that children's brains aren't fully developed, so therefore can't be held accountable for their actions. While developmental maturity varies, research from the Australian Institute of Criminology in 2021 indicates that children as young as 10 can have a basic understanding of their actions and their consequences, as expanded on by our first speaker. Current legal frameworks already account for developmental differences by providing age-appropriate interventions. Raising the age to 14 could prevent the legal system from addressing and reforming the behaviour of individuals who are capable of understanding their actions, which could result in serious criminal behaviour. The second affirmative speaker has suggested that raising the age of criminal responsibility might reduce the overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in detention. Their point completely overlooks the root causes, like poverty, family violence, and systemic discrimination. Recent studies by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare show these factors drive higher rates of justice system involvement. Instead of merely delaying intervention, we have targeted culturally appropriate programs that address these underlying issues, reducing disparities while ensuring accountability and public safety. The second affirmative speaker has attempted to say that there are better solutions. However, children in juvenile centres can still attend personalised programs. According to the Queensland Government, the classes are personalised to suit the child's ability and age. Students also get to learn various subjects and different life skills in the programs. This aimed approach helps educate the children and successfully reintegrate the children back into society. The second affirmative speaker also stated that children under 14 are less likely to benefit from rehab and punishment when held criminally responsible. This is false. The effectiveness of rehabilitation is not determined by age, but by the nature of the crime, the interventions provided, and the offender's experiences. The National Institute of Justice highlights that tailored rehab programs, such as the cognitive behavioural therapy and family counselling, have proven effective for younger offenders. These programs are designed to address the specific needs for young people and can be implemented without changing the age of criminal responsibility. Lastly, I would like to point out that the third affirmative speaker questioned whether we would put a 9 or 5-year-old in juvenile. I would like to highlight that the topic is that the current criminal responsibility is 10 years old. Therefore, this is an unnecessary statement. Today, our first speaker argued that raising the age of criminal responsibility undermines our justice system and accountability. Accountability from a young age instills a sense of responsibility and deters repeated offences, fostering the understanding of consequences. She discussed how Dr. Melanie Killen's research shows children by age 10 can grasp right from wrong, making early legal consequences crucial for self-development. Furthermore, she found that data highlights rising youth crime rates and repeated offences. Maintaining current age limits ensures justice and supports rehab while deterring future crime. Our second speaker addressed how the current juvenile justice system is effective and designed to assist children in the best way possible, outlining how the principle of Dolly Incapax helps minimise potential harm to the child and provide specific support to aid them. She also discussed how the current age of responsibility facilitates early intervention, effectively reducing repeated offences. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, raising the age of criminal responsibility to 14 would disregard the advances in child development and weaken our current system of earlier intervention. Now ask yourself this: should we deny young people the chance for change as an offender rather than guiding them towards a future? Thank you.
While the adjudicator finalises the results, I will read this evening's chairman notices. We are delighted to announce that the grand finals will be held at the House of Assembly Chamber Parliament House on Saturday, 21st September 2024. The topic and site information for the semi-finals will be available on the Debating SA website from tomorrow morning. Please be sure to check your site and debate time information carefully. Debates will be held there at the same venue next week. That's all. I now invite the adjudicator, Mr. Best, to come forward.
As you may have noticed, there is 3 adjudicators tonight. So for this evening, we will just be giving the Speaker of the Night award, and then I'll be announcing the team that has won, without giving detail as to the points or any individual feedback. With that being said, we believe the best Speaker of the Night goes to the 3rd negative speaker. Congratulations. With that being said as well, on a split decision, the win goes to the negative team. Congratulations.
I call upon a member of the runner-up team to give a vote of thanks.
So on behalf of the affirmative team, I'd first like to thank the adjudicators for taking the time to come and judge our debate and giving out the Speaker of the Night award, the audience for taking the time to come and watch our debate and being there to support us through this whole season of debating, and of course the negative team for putting up such a good debate, and we think you guys did really great, and also the chairman and timekeeper.
I call upon a member of the winning team to second that vote of thanks.
I'd like to say a big thank you to the adjudicators for taking the time to come here, the audience of course for being such a wonderful audience, the timer and chairperson, and of course the opposing team. You guys did amazing. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance. I now declare this debate closed.